Equality is an immense fib. Granted, that isn't the most popular topic at present, as everyone gets an award for participation, but I'm an 80s jit with an old school mindset that tells you exactly how it is. I mean, let's pretend you're quite portly and you asked a boomer. They'd probably say, yeah, you could lose a few pounds. Millennials would gaslight you to hell and state that you're beautiful, whilst Gen X would turn and simply spit, I know 5 fatties, and you're 4 of them. End of discussion. Remember, we were the latchkey generation that nobody gave an F about, but that also means we wrote our own script, knew what true freedom meant, and the responsibility it brings. I say all of that to say this. Who keeps sending the prophets, and why? Just ponder it for a bit, even if you ain't religious, as I'm going to break down my point of view, and it will be as blunt as a spoon and just as essential. Think about it, my friend. You could ditch the other two and survive with that single implement, as it's just so effective at coming through in a fix. That's the Gen X mindset. But remember, there is no spoon. So, here's one I prepared earlier to increase your wavelength with a few questions. If everything was perfect when it came to wearing flesh and walking around the planet, would there be any need for prophets? Better yet, from whence they came with their messages that exclaim universally, you are a God wearing flesh, and treat the next man like yourself because they are, in essence. That's it. Again and again, an identical message does ring from different mouths all across this realm. How many truly get the message from the messenger? Curious, isn't it? Do you know what else is static? Prophets. Not like crosses to bear or kicking the ballistics on spiritual things, but the way the tills ring, and best of all, they pay no taxes as well, and the balance sheet is crooked as hell as they preach and teach the afterlife from behind bulletproof glass and support a solid gold crucifix whilst telling you to give and be exceedingly generous. Doesn't that make you think? I mean, it doesn't matter your religion, the priest is always rich. Some of them keep it better hid and sell a pious image, but even Ned Flanders was revealed as the devil. I mean, have you ever wondered exactly how and why the Simpsons managed to predict everything? It's a bit of a tangent, but I like to think outside of the box and decode the symbols in the message, like how Jews, Christians, and Muslims all pay obeisance to a black cube. Isn't that fascinating? Now you, yourself, may not be religious, but right now, in your grip, is the exact same thing. And that black mirror is what the Queen's secret agent back when used to communicate with angels. So what the hell is happening? Stranger still, it spins on the pole of Saturn, and if you line up the orbits of Jupiter with it, you get a hexagram, just like how the paths of Venus and Earth do the same thing with a pentagram. I mean, if that doesn't hint we're in a simulation, I don't know what will, because how the hell do you explain that the moon, sun, and planet all have a 108 resonance in them then? Funny how these digits have been revered since the ancient days, eh? Getting back to the prophets, a dude has an inkling that something is incorrect. Comes whatever does next, he still gets out of bed and puts his pants on one leg at a time. I don't mean this as a diss to anyone's prophet or anything. I'm just telling you how it is, because we all must wear flesh to interact with this realm. Let me give you an example. Let's pretend you're playing a multiplayer game and are killed, dead. In pixels, that is. You can float about a bit like a ghost and watch your friends all engaging, but they can't see or hear you, as you are no longer of their realm, but you are in it for a while. Now, as you are waiting for your next round to respawn, you notice something. It gets your interest, but then you hear that ping and are back online again. And after a bit, you're dead. So the game creeps into the netherworld, waiting. That blip comes into your mind again. So you ignore the action and pay some attention to this really strange thing. All of a sudden everything shifts, and it's like you've been pulled through a quantum tunnel mixed with a water slide of pure light as you bounce out of the screen of a VR headset and notice that you're an alien from the year 4096 playing a total immersion sim called Let's Be Humans. Within this, they've built games within games to keep them entertained, but get this, you're actually in a coma, and your little grey parents, well, they're stressed to death and praying to Xenu for a miracle. And at that moment, it happens. Your big black eyes flicker and the machine's beeps perk up a bit. You're all telepathic and they start communicating and are so glad you're back in the flesh. You wonder what the hell happened, so they fill you in. The game called Let's Be Humans developed some type of glitch. A mind virus infected the players within, and it started offlining their real-world equivalents. Some died super quick, others vegetated. There was lots of stress for the ones still living, because if they pull off the headset, then logically their child will be left trapped within the game and have no way of returning back. You were the first one to come, alive and well. They nurse you back to health. Everyone hails it a miracle. You fill them in about the game and how you, an alien with 6 fingers, grey skin, and identical appearance as the rest, totally believed that you were John of House Smith, as you had a job, some bills, and kids, and were just playing a game where you noticed this odd symbol that got your attention and it brought you back to life again. What happens next, do you suspect? Could you rest knowing the true sketch, or would you mount a rescue mission after filling the rest in on what happens in the game that you are playing using your soul as a credit? You tell them how reincarnation is a side effect of life addiction, and how you keep changing skin each time you're cast in, but due to the mind wipe effect, you totally believe whatever that voice in your head and your regularly scheduled programming says. They bring together the best brains and formulate a plan to bring home their lost children, as there is an entire generation plugged in that are, in the real world, slowly dying as the game drains their resonance. They come up with a concept. They call him a prophet. One who has underwent rigorous training in order to awaken in the game and teach them that between live state is the biggest trick and the only point that they can leave, but it's actually filled to the gills with crafty little machine elves that have one intent: bamboozlement. So they can lure you back in, because without you there, they'd be bored, they'd have no friends. They created the mind virus and the game within a game concept, and right now, you are in the world they built, my friend. Because whilst the meta may be abstract as hell, it's really simple as well. But as usual, do not believe a thing I've said, and try and prove me incorrect instead. Because if the above sketch is how it is, then there's obviously a local force that's killing these prophets and making profits by subverting their message, yes? Why is there not one religion in this realm that hasn't fragmented into the hatred of the next who believe 99% the same as them? Why does every single DMT tripper attest that these machine elves play with their heads and play God? And why do all NDEers see exactly what they expect after being hit with a Be Kind rewind effect? It's like 80s VHS leaping out the deck, only to get plugged back in for another spin. What if the greatest trick your opponent ever did was convincing this alien consciousness it was actually John of House Smith and was generated by the flesh, and then it pretends to be the voice in your head as well, and that's the basic message of every single prophet who ever came to this realm? Don't you wonder about these things, my friend? Or don't you wonder why you've never wondered? Or don't you wonder why you never wondered because you never had the time to wonder about what you didn't know you weren't wondering about? That's what we'll examine in the next vid. Till we meet again.